Maybe you can start when you're ready.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon and for sparing some time to be with us. My name is Moemedi Tafa. I am a partner at Armstrong's Attorneys in Botswana. I am also the president of the African Labour Law Society. So I just want to take this opportunity, as I've just said, to welcome you and thank you again for sparing a moment with us today as we have our very exciting speaker who will be taking us through a presentation this afternoon. For those of you that were part of our conference recently in February here at the GICC in Gaborone, Botswana, you definitely remember Mr. Tebatso Hule, who was, I think, one of the most exciting and exhilarating speakers that we had on the day. So we've managed to secure him once again for this afternoon. We are thankful to him. And just a brief background about Mr. Hule. I've had the privilege of working with him on numerous occasions in the employment and labor law sphere. He is currently the Senior Human Resources Manager at the Botswana Diamond Company here in Botswana. And as part of his portfolio, he oversees employment relations, HR shared services, and HR systems, as well as data analytics for Botswana. Mr. Hule has over 15 years experience in ER and HR management within the mining industry. That's quite a number of years, Mr. Hule. He has held various leadership roles, including Director HR, Human Resources Manager, and for different organizations as well, both in academia, in government, as well as in non-profit sector. He has served in the boards of different national organizations, including the National Arts Council of Botswana, the Botswana Society, and the Botswana National Youth Council. From his academic portfolio, you'll definitely agree with me that he's quite a man of many qualifications. He holds a Master of Public Administration with specialization in HR management. He has a Master of Arts in Politics and International Relations, as well as a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science and Public Administration from the University of Botswana. Quite interesting as well, he holds a a Master of Science degree rather, in Strategic Management from the University of Derby, and a Master of Arts in Mass Communication from the Liverpool John Moore University. He has undergone various executive development programs, including the program for management development with the University of Cape Town's Graduate School of Business and Negotiation Science with Wits Business School. So from my brief end, I wish to allow you to have an awesome afternoon with us this day as we take on and allow Mr. Hule to take us through his presentation for the rest of the afternoon. Mr. Hule, over to you.
All right. Thanks, Mr. Tafa, for the very kind introduction. I'm just going to put my slides up. Okay. Trusting that audible and my presentation is live on your screens. I think the introduction, as Mr. Tafa has said, this is coming on the backdrop of the recent African Labour Law Society conference that was held in Gaborone, where we had an opportunity to discuss a bit more in depth the conversation that we will have today. And the conversation is largely talking to employee recognition in the workplace or around issues of diversity, inclusion, and equity. particularly looking at it from a neurodiversity perspective, which is a topic that has not found enough space in conversations around employment and employment law. So to kick off the conversation, I'll just quickly, just in brief, give you some insights into the company that I work for, which is Debswana Diamond Company. And I'm doing this just to create context to appreciate the environment in which I'm working and the environment which is enabling me to form the views that I'll share with you. So at Debswana, I'm responsible for employment relations, which portfolio is largely dedicated to ensuring that the workplace is functional, there is success in the employment journey, and employees feel accommodated and recognized in the workplace. So it's a journey that is quite fulfilling in that it enables me to have interactions with different individuals where I'm able to appreciate different dynamics relating to their employment. So in a nutshell, Debswana Diamond Company is a company that started in 1969. It's a partnership between De Beers Corporation and the Botswana government. And we are operating, as you can see on the screen, 4 mines spread across the country. 3 of the mines being Orapa, Letlhakane, and Damsa are situated in the central part of Botswana. And our Jwaneng mine is situated in the southern part at a place called Jwaneng Town. And the corporate center operating from Gaborone. The picture on the screen there symbolizes the day when the company was formed. The 2 gentlemen there smiling in the middle of the screen, the first president and a man who would then later on become the second president. It was a picture taken on the day this company was formed. So it's quite a significant picture in the history of this company. We celebrated 57 years of existence a few days ago. So in relation to the significance of the company, in 1966, when Botswana gained independence, we were one of the poorest countries in the world. In fact, those who have recorded and documented the journey suggest that Botswana was the 3rd poorest country in the world. We had about 22 graduates across the country holding university degrees. And when it comes to developments, infrastructural developments, we had about only 12 kilometers of tarred road. And because of diamond mining, particularly diamond mining by Debswana Diamond Company, over the years, we've seen a radical transformation of the economy. We have, over the years, from when the company came into existence, mined just over 200 tons of diamonds. And these 200 tons of diamonds have transformed Botswana into what you see there on the screen from what it was in 1966. So this is our Orapa mine, which was the first mine we started operating in 1971. This is the first mine that started modern mining in the Republic of Botswana. It opened in 1971. This is our Jwaneng mine, which then was later opened in 1982, one of the biggest and most valuable assets in the world of diamond mining in the world. Okay, when it comes to our employment universe, we are responsible for creating jobs across different spheres. If you look at the number of employees employed directly by Debswana, as well as employees that are working for our business partners, and largely even those that whose jobs are a result of Debswana operating in the areas where they are living. We are looking at over 10,000 people who have been employed because of the business we do. The employment universe is quite diverse. We are operating 5 private schools. So in our employment universe, we employ teachers, we employ educators. We are operating 2 private hospitals rather. The Orapa Mine Hospital and the Jwaneng Mine Hospital, where we employ healthcare professionals, from doctors to healthcare auxiliaries to dentists, all across the healthcare spectrum. We are operating Orapa and Jwana game parks, meaning that our employment universe also includes game rangers, people who work in the conservation space. We are operating a museum where we also employ curators who work in our museum. So this is just to, in a nutshell, give you an appreciation of the diversity of employment at Debswana. Now going back to the conversation that we are having for the day, we are looking at accommodation of neurodivergent individuals in the workplace, in our policies, in our processes, and really just dissecting what neurodiversity is, as well as what is required for us to recognize and ensure there is recognition and accommodation of persons who are neurodivergent. Now, to create context, at Debswana, we've been quite deliberate in terms of our inclusion journey. We have created partnerships with the local office of the president, United Nations, the Council for the Disabled, which partnerships have enabled us to bring into employment close to or slightly over 113 individuals who are differently abled. And this has been a journey that we initiated about 2 years ago, where we were deliberate in partnering with these institutions to identify and bring into employment persons who are differently abled. We have in the journey acquired assistive devices. You'll be aware that persons who are visually impaired require special assistance from specific softwares, specific devices. We have managed to acquire such devices. We have recruited, as demonstration of our seriousness about inclusion, a sign language interpreter who is not only interpreting for persons who need their assistance, but also teaching the workers sign language itself, so that there is a proper accommodation. Okay, the other thing that we have deliberately done, we have trained some of our workers who were previously in the cleaning services, predominantly female, train them on operating machines, and ultimately managing to absorb quite a number of them as machine operators. So this is a journey that we've been on, quite fulfilling. It's a journey that we are proud about, and a journey that we're encouraging other employers to also embark on. Okay, on neurodiversity, it will initially sound as a technical or scientific or medical term. However, it's quite a basic term that once you understand, you then can relate to persons who are neurodivergent in the workplace. So this is a term that is generally referring to the variations in how people think and receive or process and interpret and react to information and social cues. So it suggests that we are all wired differently. We are all, our mental capabilities, our brains are all wired to operate differently. And it is not something that specific people will only have. It is a term that generally is used to describe the diversity of the human brain. And in most instances, when we do realize that there are some persons who think differently from us, we tend to, out of not understanding, term them to be mad, or term them to be using different terminologies or different classifications. Sometimes we find them to be unreasonable, not serious. Sometimes we use words such as they suffer from ADHD. We call them crazy, we call them mad, we call them mentally retarded, all from a lack of understanding on how the human brain is wired. So this is a conversation that, as individuals and professionals who are working in the employment space, and especially in the labor law space as well, we need to be cognizant of and alive to, and understand more better than persons who are not working with employees. So statistics suggest that many people who are neurodivergent are actually not aware that they are neurodivergent. There's some statistics that suggest that close to 20% of the world population is on the neurodivergent spectrum. So it's something that obviously, if it is 20% of the global population, it means a significant number of people who are alive are on the spectrum, and we need to be alive to the realities they have to face, and how we can help them navigate through the world of employment. And we also need to be alive to the reality that if we only had one way of thinking, if there was only one way the brain was functioning, then we would definitely have limited variations in some of the things that we continue to enjoy as part of normal social life. Our music is divergent because people's brains are thinking differently. Art, science, and mathematics, we all experience it differently because different brains conceptualize and innovate around different concepts. So it's something that we need to appreciate, that the differences in how our brains are functioning is something that we need to embrace. Okay, and the other thing that we need to also appreciate as professionals working in employment and the labor law space is that individuals, all individuals, including neurodivergent individuals, have a right to a decent, dignified life. Most of the normal adults I know are either in employment or seeking to get into employment or depend on employment for their livelihood. So equally, when we talk of human rights, we need to create workspaces where everybody is accommodated, where even persons who are neurodivergent are able to have access and be enabled to be successful in employment. So we need to, as human rights activists as well, be cognizant of that reality. Now, the challenges that we have faced that are quite prevalent is that when it comes to neurodiversity, there is very little research that has been done, particularly on the African context, in employment, in society, in learning, in the different areas where neurodivergent persons are there. There has been very little research that has been done in trying to understand the realities that they live within. And where research has happened or research has been done, it has largely centered around neurodiversity in children, as well as in the learning environment. If you look at the literature that's available, you'll realize that most of it tends to lean towards neurodiversity in learning institutions and children, and very little work has been done around neurodiversity in the workplace, where persons who are neurodivergent are now classified as workers and interacting with other workers in the workplace. Autistic spectrum disorders, also because of their nature being of a mental nature, are also largely invisible and cannot immediately be classified as a disability by most people, meaning that because we are unable to immediately detect that somebody is neurodivergent, then we tend not to be able to identify and develop relevant interventions to enable them to be successful in the workplace. Now, when we talk of autism spectrum disorders, this is a range of conditions that affect cognitive abilities, and there are quite many. Most people who are familiar with ASD are perhaps parents who have raised children who were on the spectrum. But for most people who have not interacted in depth with persons who are on the spectrum, there may be some limitations in terms of understanding. We call it a spectrum because the ailments are on a range, and they range also in intensity from quite low intensity to high intensity, and they also are quite diverse in themselves in terms of what is included and involved. So most examples that you'll be familiar with is autism, ADHD, dyslexia, obsessive compulsive disorder. So these are just a few that people may be familiar with. Okay. Now, persons who are on the spectrum normally have quite unconventional interpretations of body language and social cues. And sometimes they are less flexible to changes in routine. Sometimes they may be hypersensitive to environmental factors. So as professionals working in employment, we need to be cognizant of these realities, appreciate that there will be people in the workplace who have challenges with reaction to social cues. You'll also know that in employment, success in the workplace is largely related to human interaction and the building of relationships. So you find that sometimes because of how persons on the spectrum interpret body language and react to social cues, brings them in conflict with other colleagues. However, there is also the upside to it that in most instances, there's been demonstration that persons who are on the spectrum, sometimes depending on the role, they can be dependable in terms of punctuality. Sometimes they can be overly punctual or not punctual. There is sometimes good consistency in the type of work they deliver. In certain instances, again, there's demonstration that in certain vocations, they are able to have better attention to detail and work quality. The barriers that exist for persons who are neurodivergent in entering the workplace, there is general misunderstanding. Obviously, I did make mention of that. There is misunderstanding of neurodiversity, especially in the workplace. In the courtrooms where labor law is practiced, there is also quite generally advanced misunderstanding. There is always a challenge of recruiters also wanting to recruit people who are familiar, who are like them, and in the process, keeping out persons who may need special accommodations. So, for instance, you'll find that in policy or in practice, when you are recruiting, sometimes the way the interview is conducted, the environment may not be as conducive for a neurodivergent individual than a neurotypical person. So we need to be familiar and appreciate these dynamics so that in our recruitment processes, when we're interviewing somebody, we're able to immediately detect from observation whether they need special considerations. There's sometimes discomfort when we realize people have different views or provide different solutions to what we are accustomed to. And sometimes we are uncomfortable with people providing opinions that are in contrast with our own beliefs. So obviously, again, for neurodivergent individuals who will from time to time be quite blunt in how they communicate, there may be certain discomfort from colleagues in terms of how they interpret the sometimes blunt and honest and so there is also a general absence of legislative and policy framework protecting employment of neurodivergent individuals. If you look at legislation across the African continent, you'll realize that it is rare to find accommodation of or creation of rules that protect neurodivergent individuals. Most of the policies that have been done and the laws that have been done with neurotypical individuals in mind. The rules that are created by policy are sometimes not accommodative of neurodivergent individuals. And again, some employers also do fear costs associated with accommodation because sometimes you have to make special arrangements in terms of how the workplace is organized. Now, we also need to appreciate that neurodiversity is not always synonymous with disability. And because most employers do not see a need to provide reasonable accommodation, we then encounter challenges, as is the case for visibly or visible physical disabilities. So there is a need for us to be alive to this reality. Most legal processes and practices and standards relating to employment also do not recognize and accommodate neurodiversity. Okay. People who are affected have generally have no voice in the workplace. They have been challenged in different workplaces in terms of everybody understanding their realities. They face deliberate and organized barriers to gainful employment, as well as access to justice. There is also a challenge with them struggling to maintain relationships, which relationships, as I was saying, are essential to success in the workplace. There is fear of ill treatment. If somebody declares that they are neurodivergent and they're on the spectrum, there is always fear that colleagues and other persons may start treating them in a manner that is not desirable. And then you find that they tend to retreat and out of fear of ill treatment, remain without a voice. And most of them, unfortunately, because of the challenges they face in the workplace, have tended to lose hope and remain silent. Now, the other upside to neurodiversity and accommodation of neurodivergent individuals in the workplace is that when applied in the workplace, there's increasing acknowledgement that specialist thinking skills attributed to mirroring neurodevelopmental conditions are sought after for employers. So there is employers who are working in the space of innovation, who require creative thinking, and who may, because of the nature of the work they do, require meticulous pattern identification or attention to detail. These skills or these characteristics are quite prevalent in persons who are neurodivergent. So there is potential, there is a need for employers to deliberately understand neurodiversity so that we can liberate potential of all workers and all employees. When we zone in on the employment space and the legal sector as well, there is definitely a lot to appreciate on neurodiversity, because in these vocations themselves, we find that there is a lot of neurodivergent individuals in our courtrooms, in our bench. There is people who are neurodivergent. The people who come before the courts on labor matters or any other matters, you'll find that many of the persons who do so may be on the spectrum. And so it's necessary for us who are charged with the responsibility of employment or facilitating labor laws to appreciate the differences in how people think. Okay, the workplace being the firm or the court or there's the normal workplace, there is a lot of benefit to accrue from persons who are neurodivergent. There is, in many instances, need for persons who are hyper-focused, people who pay proper and detailed attention to detail, people who are able to do pattern mapping. It's an essential skill, or these are essential skills and attributes that are necessary, especially in the courtroom. Most cases sometimes spend over a very long period of time, and then there's need for us to be able to connect the dots from 5 years ago, from 10 years ago. So if you are having lawyers who are able to connect the dots and be able to look at information, look at documents, and be able to connect page 340 with page 5 is definitely a type of attribute that you want in a law. So where we have lawyers or persons working in the labor law space who are able to do this, it is a plus for the work that they do. Many industries have benefited from accommodation of persons who are neurodivergent. In the IT space, where there is a high reliance on mapping of algorithms and data analysis, the IT space has found it quite useful to have persons who are neurodivergent doing some of the work. In the security and defense space, intelligence analysis, mapping patterns, somebody who is able to come in and look at a crime scene and immediately be able to detect that this is what could have happened and see things that ordinary or persons who are neurotypical may not be able to see. In the creative industries, I think I did make mention earlier that in the creative industries, which rely on innovation and conceptualization, some of the attributes associated with neurodivergent individuals are quite important. So what can we do to accommodate? There is need for us from understanding neurodiversity. We need to be able to have some flexibility around our work schedules. How we communicate, we need to be cognizant of the way we communicate and appreciate that different individuals, because of their differences in their mental construct, will consume information differently, and ensure that as we communicate with the workforce, we are able to have that in mind. We may need to create quiet workspaces because in certain instances, because of some of the conditions, there is need for people to be enabled to work in environments that are not too noisy, workspaces that are color neutral. I was giving an example, I think, when we spoke about this conversation at the conference earlier in the year, that you'll find that sometimes the colors that are used in the courtrooms, we use quite dark colors for the walls, and then persons who are in the courtroom, if they are on the spectrum, sometimes they may feel clustered or feel that the environment is not conducive for them, and then unable to properly represent themselves, and ultimately leading to decisions that could have been done differently had the environment been different. We need to ensure that our policies allow for regular breaks and accommodating different persons, where there is opportunity for persons to work remotely who are unable to work in environments where there's too many people. We need to have flexibility around this. We also need to be able to understand specific health requirements for the different individuals. Why do we need to do it? Ethically, morally, and legally, it is the right thing to do. So accommodation of individuals who are neurodivergent is something that ethically, as persons who work in employment or persons who facilitate employment, both from a legal perspective and from a social perspective, we have a moral obligation and ethical obligation to ensure that all persons have equal access to the workplace and are enabled to be successful in employment. We are able to attract new talent and with a diversity of skills, enhance innovation in the workplace, and ensure that no potential is missed because we have closed out specific individuals from employment. We also have an opportunity to create environments where everybody is able to have a culture of inclusion and diversity. So we need to be deliberate in our inclusion efforts. I did mention that at Debswana, we have been quite deliberate. When I say we've been deliberate, I'm not saying we have arrived. We are still on the journey. It's a learning journey, but we found the journey quite fulfilling. And it's something that we encourage other employers to also embark on. We need to raise awareness within the workplace in this fashion that we're doing. Talk to colleagues, talk to other employers to appreciate the challenges that neurodivergent people face in the workplace, create awareness within the workplace so that we are able to ensure they are accommodated and understood, because most of the challenges they face arise from them not being understood. And we also then need to rethink our policies, our processes, and the law itself to recheck that the rules that we've created in policy in the different workspaces, the rules that we've created in the courts, in our legal processes, we need to revisit them and always test that they are able to accommodate persons who are neurodivergent and on the spectrum. So with that, let me thank you and the conversation at this point. I believe there will be opportunity for us to entertain a few questions and comments before I hand over to the chairperson. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hule, for that very insightful presentation. To those of us that would have questions, please do put your questions in the chat. You can see there Claire has asked of us to do that. I'm sure we've got plenty of questions. And let's just share them so he can. So whilst he's here for free, we can abuse him and get the most out of him. And then we can take it from there. Mr. Hule, it doesn't seem like anybody's got questions for you at the moment. Okay, there's one there. Okay, I see there's one there from Benedicta. It says, thank you for the very insightful presentation. How do we encourage those who may not know they are neurodivergent to get checked?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. As I was saying, there's always challenges in creating an environment in the workplace where people are free to say, look, you need to accommodate me differently. And it all starts with us having open conversations about neurodiversity. So you'll find that persons who are neurodivergent, as I was saying earlier, are subjected to hearing colleagues talk about persons who are neurodivergent in a negative tone. But once we start having open conversations in the workplace and actually encouraging people to either self-diagnose or professionally get diagnosed, and also allowing and enabling those who are supervising them to also be aware on how they need to accommodate them, then we can create an environment where people can feel free to get diagnosed and also raise their hands to say, please be aware that I need to be accommodated differently. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. There's a nice comment there from Kabo Moseki. He says, I've always known that I'm different. Today, I've realized that I'm neurodivergent. So I think you've made one awesome change to someone's life today. Thank you, Mr. Hule. And thank you very much, Kabo, for that. We've got Melissa Mogodi. She says, such an important mission. Thanks, Mr. Hule, for driving this conversation. As is usually the case with inclusion, there is a lot of work to be done. What do you think it would take to drive education around neurodivergence in organizations like the Botswana? Because inclusion really is at its core about what one feels like in the workplace, how peers treat them, collaborate with them, and include them.
Yeah. So it's obviously something that beyond the organization saying we want to accommodate or we are being deliberate about accommodation, we also need to be enabling other colleagues to have the same sense of agency and the same sense of understanding in why it is important to accommodate. So what we've done in different platforms, we are championing, taking advantage of the size of our company and the influence we've had. We've been deliberately championing the conversation and encouraging other employers to take a leaf from what we're doing. And as I was saying, not that we are at the final destination, but it's a journey that we are encouraging other employers to embark on. And we believe that platforms such as these are also enabling other employers to ignite the conversation in their different workspaces. Thanks.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mamorena Madisha. Mr. Hule, please share how you got it right. Did it require policy reform within the organization?
Yeah, getting it right is quite an overkill. We have not yet gotten to where we want to be. So I'll not raise my hand and profess that we are at the destination. However, we've been deliberate. We have looked at our policies, identified areas where sometimes unconsciously we may have created certain rules that are not accommodative, and tried our best to ensure that we redefine how our policies are drafted in terms of accommodating persons who are neurodivergent. So it's a journey that we're on. We continue to do that. We continue to revise our policies, our frameworks, to ensure that whenever we are reviewing the documents, we are cognizant of the reality that the different persons think differently in the workplace, and they all deserve to be accommodated and enabled to be successful in the workplace. Thanks.
Thank you. We've got the next one from Dumisang, who says, would you say failing to recognize this as well as accommodate it can lead to quiet quitting and development of mental disorders?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think there's been many instances where persons who feel unseen in the workplace ultimately then decide to just stay in their corner. Sometimes you find that because we are unable to detect and unable to appreciate the differences and apply the rules as are written in text equally and fairly. I know in law we have a rule that says the rule must be applied fairly, equally for everybody. And you'll find that philosophy then is not in congruence with understanding that people are different, and therefore there may be instances where the law cannot be applied in the same way to everybody, or policy cannot be applied in the same way to everybody in the workplace. So we need to be consciously alive to this and not say that the rule says everybody must come to work at 8 a.m. Therefore, it is the rule. Anybody who comes late would have broken the rule. We need to be alive to the reality that persons who are on the spectrum sometimes have challenges with being punctual, and therefore they will come to work a bit late on certain days. Sometimes they will say things that appear to suggest they're insolent or insubordinate because they say things as they think them, and they are unable to sometimes filter what they're thinking, which neurotypical people normally do. So if a person on the spectrum feels that the boss is out of order, they will normally call the boss out and say, "The boss, I think you're out of order." But other people may think, well, this is not something to say in the workplace. So we need to be alive to these realities so that those of us who supervise individuals, we are aware that sometimes people don't act the way they act because they're being disrespectful. It is because of how their brains are wired. And when we start appreciating these differences, then we are better able to manage different people. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you so much. We've got something from Bedzani Daniel, a medical. Did you get me there, Mr. Ule?
I must have missed that.
Okay, I was saying from Bedzani Daniel, it says, can we term such individuals as having a medical illness?
Well, I'm not a medical doctor, so I don't want to risk appearing to be talking scientifically. I'm merely speaking from a perspective of social relations in the workplace. But yes, obviously, we are aware that autistic disorders are medically classified, and there is certain interventions that can be done from a medical perspective that can enable persons to be successful in the workplace. So we can say comfortably that in certain instances, we can comfortably classify them as medical, but beyond medical, for purposes of this conversation and for purposes of this audience, we need first to appreciate it before we think of it as a medical problem, to appreciate it as a social challenge that we have to handle delicately and ensure that people are comfortable, people in the social relations in the workplace, people are accommodated before we even jump into the medical side of the spectrum. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have the next comment or question rather from Khaone. How do you monitor the performance of an employee who's neurodivergent, and how do you as an employer recognize such an employee?
It will always be difficult. Remember, most people who are neurodivergent, as I was saying, are unable to come to the open and say, I'm neurodivergent. So sometimes you find that when you are managing performance, somebody will be not delivering on time, and everybody classified as a person who's not interested in coming to the party and delivering work on time. But once we are able to understand the different dynamics that will come to play when you are supervising or managing performance of a neurodivergent individual, then you are able to accommodate some of these things as they happen. You are able to accommodate the special needs of these individuals, and then you are in a better space to be better informed in your assessment of the performance of the individuals. So it really starts with understanding the dynamics and taking time to read and learn about what is involved. Most of the time, we tend to look at things from our own perspective and assume that where we are or where we are looking at things from is the actual authoritative place to be looking at the world. So it takes a deliberate move to stand in another man's shoes to appreciate what challenges they may have, and what accommodations would be necessary for them. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. Mamorena Madisha is very impressed with your presentation. I think it's the second time Mamorena Madisha has posted something, so thank you for that. The next question we have is from Padzimo. How do we create a safe environment for neurodivergent individuals without creating a stigma to them and favoritism?
Actually, somebody asked me this question some time back, that when we speak of accommodating neurodivergent individuals, how do we then also protecting neurodivergent individuals from neurotypical people? How do we then also protect neurotypical people from neuro? I mean, I'm saying the word protect loosely, not to suggest that there is need for any protection. So it really starts with opening the conversation. What has been lacking in the workplace is the opening up of this conversation to ensure that people understand. And I tell you from experience that once you've had a conversation with people to understand what may be involved, you start realizing that people then tend to have a different approach and different understanding of what they need to do to accommodate persons who are neurodivergent. So yeah, I guess that's what's required for us to initiate the conversation.
Okay, I think we then have a comment from Pride Malomo. Employees do not disclose having such conditions, and some may not be aware. How we then create a safe space to have them explore it without appearing to be discriminating against them is the biggest challenge. This was very informative. Thank you. That's just a comment and a compliment to you. We've got Patience, Daniel. Thank you, my leader, for the conversation. I'm a beneficiary of your leadership. I am one of your DAP employees. Wow. That's a nice comment and compliment to you once again. Then we've got Muhumutsi Mwate. What are the most impactful yet low-cost workplace adjustments that employers can implement to support neurodivergent employees?
Look, I think firstly, the workplace itself. You know, sometimes when we are just as a basic example, when you are painting the office, in most instances, people don't think about the colors that are being used to paint the offices. So from the onset, if you are actively or deliberately intent on accommodation of neurodivergence in the workplace, you are able to, from the first instance, when you are deciding on the color of paint you're going to use, it doesn't cost an additional dime to paint the office red or blue. The cost of the paint is the same, but it takes you deciding which color you are going to use. So these are just some of the things that when we are able to start thinking before we implement anything, think about how we will be accommodating neurodivergent individuals, you'll find that we're able to do it at no additional cost because we had it in mind before we started doing whatever it is we want to do.
Okay, thank you. Chedza Muzila says, very insightful share indeed, TH. No more judging, so to say. Muhomotsi Mwatse, one change you would recommend that every leader should make tomorrow to create a more neuro-inclusive environment or workplace?
Well, I think the one big thing is creating an environment where neurodivergent people are free to approach their leaders and openly discuss their challenges or their specific needs. So you'll find that the tone of voice we use as leaders sometimes is the one that prevents and prohibits people from opening up about the challenges. If a leader is one who is quite rough on people. When something has not been done, the first thing that comes to mind is taking the person to task. You'll then realize that that's an environment that's not conducive for people to open up about how they need to be accommodated. So if there is one thing that any leader managing people should do, is create that environment where people are free to open up and talk to them about the challenges they face.
Thank you. Yolisa Mukobi, is there any specific country legislation we can benchmark with that is inclusive, preferably an African country?
Well, I wouldn't from the top of my head highlight any. In fact, what I've looked at in my assessment, as I said earlier, there's challenges right across. And I don't think it's necessarily even just in Africa. I think it's a global problem where when we look at laws, legislating employment, we tend to have a what do you say, one shoe size fits all. So that's a challenge that's there. And sometimes, as I was saying, the principles that we adopt, I know I did some courses in law when I was doing my initial studies at the university, and we're learning about the concept of fairness, that treating people the same way, regardless of their differences, you have to treat them the same way. The concepts that lawyers normally use around reasonableness and unreasonableness. You find that these concepts are so entrenched in everyday legal language and everyday workplace language, such that we are then prohibited from thinking away from those rules. When somebody does something that we are not accustomed to, we apply the reasonableness standard and say, well, this person, no person in their right minds would do the same thing, and not realize that actually this person is in their very right mind and they're doing this thing, and we need to understand what is causing them to do it in this way.
Okay, thank you. We've got Onke Medze M, who says, great share, Mr. Hule. Then we've got Kumo Buiditwe. How do we reconcile, especially from a legal perspective, that we are reducing the determination of someone's actions to it's just how the brain works? The reality is that we cannot entirely explain one's actions through biology alone. Legally, employers must have a margin to assess the extent of misconduct of employees and be held accountable, even to the extent of legal action. But to what extent, with consideration of the neurodivergence as a real social issue rather than an excuse? I unfortunately did not study legislation and policy of other states, but would welcome what you may have observed from other states.
Yeah, it's it's a dicey one. Obviously, one of the rules in the workplace is that we need to have rules to govern order and ensure that there's a specific way that things happen. The workplace is predictable. People come to work every day. All of them you expect, because if you, in the absence of rules, then you create chaos. Everybody will come at a different time and say, look, well, you must accommodate us. Be aware that I'm neurodivergent, so I'm not too time conscious, so I'll come at 10. So you still have to have rules. But the central focus of my view is that in application of the rules in the workplace, while ensuring that there is order, while there is while ensuring there is specific parameters that everybody has to conform to, we need to also be alive to the reality that 20% of the people in that workplace may be on the spectrum, and there may be a need for us to have special considerations. And this is not to suggest that we should not have parameters and certain or set standards of conduct within the workplace. But the application of the rules is better done when we are alive to and appreciate the differences in people's different cognitive abilities.
Okay, thank you. We've got Tero Rabasimane. Thank you for this. I don't know if I may have missed it. If I did, pardon, but do you provide neurodiversity and autism acceptance training for managers and teams to prevent microaggressions and foster genuine belonging?
Yeah, not necessarily in the context of trainings in the normal sense of trainings, but we have initiated conversations where we're enabling managers to appreciate the differences of what they need to accommodate. And as I said, it's a journey that is not, we're not intending to suggest that we've arrived. These are some of the interventions that we remain open to exploring, ensuring that there is deliberate and targeted training for managers who are managing people to ensure that everybody is understanding and on the same wavelength as to what is expected and how we can facilitate successful employment.
Okay, thank you. We've got one from Bunolo. Considering that neurodivergent persons are different, should employers still standardize policies or procedures when accommodating them rather than individualize them according to their needs?
Yeah, it will be difficult to suggest that we can have one policy per individual in the workplace. So the reality that you're still required to have standard policies that are applicable to everybody, that's a reality that we have to live with. It is also tried that even when we look at the laws, we cannot have a law for every individual. What is, however, important is that in the application of the policy, we must have an open mind. We must appreciate and understand that different persons will require different accommodations. So this is where the conversation starts, that in application of policy, let us as the different employers be cognizant of this, so that in the event you are faced with a problem where you have to make an accommodation, you are able to justify the accommodation with fact and with understanding. Why you are making a certain call away from or deviating from what would have been considered standard process or what is expected by the business. So yeah, once you properly appreciate, you're able to even properly justify any deviations from policy when accommodating individuals.
Okay. Chosen one. Listening to you today on your delivery about neurodivergence, I realized something from some of the comments, that the problem and confusion lies in people taking deliberate empowerment as favoritism. That is the major challenge with inclusion. How do you go about sensitization of this?
Yeah. So what we've done from experience from the company, we've been embarking on in deliberate activities to educate the general workforce on accommodation. I did mention earlier that one of the things that you can do that are actually not positive is bring in somebody who needs accommodation into an environment where people will not accommodate them, or into an environment where people are not ready to accommodate their differences. So yeah, it's important that conversations continue to happen. Most of the time you find that in environments where there's been accommodation, the focus tends to go towards the persons who are being accommodated and not the persons who should be facilitating the conversation on accommodation. So it is important for employers to ensure that everybody is given comfort, is given the right tools in working with persons who need special accommodations.
Okay, we've got Cheza Muzila again. If not medically supported through a doctor's note, won't some find a loophole to use against those in place of leadership, for example, insolence behavior?
Well, it's quite difficult to make a call on that one. There is people who have been medically diagnosed. There is people who do not know that they are on the spectrum. But sometimes if you are a leader who's armed with information and understanding, you are even in a better place than the individual concerned to appreciate that there could be something that I need to be alive to. There may be a need for me to accommodate. There is instances where people act out of character. You know, this person normally would not do this, but in a specific instance, they then act in a way that you know definitely that this is not what we are used to. So once you are armed with understanding that people may be different and there may be different triggers for people to act in certain ways, then you are able to make the accommodations without necessarily even having a medical diagnosis. Most people do not actually get diagnosed because of the fear of how they'll be treated in the workplace. So they tend to, even those who realize that I may be thinking differently, they tend to keep it to themselves and have a terrible time trying to navigate in an environment where they are thinking differently from the rest of everybody, and everybody else doesn't understand them. So that's why it's very important for even a neurotypical manager to understand neurodiversity so that they can accommodate. And in other instances, there's also instances where it is the leader who is neurodivergent, and the persons following also then need to appreciate the differences in how they process information, how they interpret social cues, so that they are also then better able to work with the leader who's neurodivergent. Minimizes opportunity for conflict in many instances.
Okay. Then we've got Bezani Daniel. The key to supporting neurodiverse talent is identifying the areas where a traditional work setup might create friction and offering simple personalized adjustments. So I think that's a sharing there by Bezani. Bakang Burupile states there, quite enlightening. Pulokeng Mpe. How do you conduct or encourage people with neurodivergent to get checked or tests? What advice would you give to someone who suspects they may be neurodivergent but is unsure whether to pursue a formal assessment? And do you conduct testing on individuals who may not realize they are neurodivergent? Professional support.
Yeah, so I wouldn't say we have freedom to conduct testing on individuals, because ultimately an individual has a right to choose whether to be diagnosed or be tested. Well, I think one colleague earlier, I think it was Cabo, he said, well, I didn't realize that I was different. But from this conversation, I'm realizing that perhaps I need to start being alive to the fact that I may be thinking differently. So I think persons who may have suspicion that they think differently should not be shy to raise it. Persons who are leading should encourage people to be open to coming out to say, I need special accommodations. So it's really that. It starts with one realizing that they may, that my delayed delivery of work or my feeling uncomfortable in the office space may be something that I need to get checked, and make an effort to get diagnosed if there's a need to do so.
Okay. The next, we've got a comment from Nzimande C. Would you please also email your presentation and details? I think that Claire at the end will deal with that. I think there's more than enough platforms available through the African Labour Law Society for you to get more information from about Mr. Hule and some of the presentations as well. We've got Osaya Sinabie, and the statement or question there is, are alternative interview methods available for candidates who may not perform best in conventional interviews?
Yeah, there should be. In fact, I like that because for most employers, we use the standard advertise, call for an interview, ask people questions, and then make a call from that. So there's opportunity for different avenues to be explored. There is opportunity for us as different employers to look at our policies and our processes that leads to recruitment. There may be people who come into the room and the interview setup is frustrating and intimidating. So you may find that you are able to enable where individual panel members are able to have conversations away from the interview setup to properly appreciate the candidate being considered. So there's many avenues. I know in certain instances, we are now using online platforms to conduct interviews. Sometimes when people are being interviewed on online platforms looking at a screen, they tend to become nervous. So there's different avenues that can be explored. But it starts with understanding that the entire recruitment process will bring in persons who need to be accommodated differently. And in fact, we may need to be deliberate even in asking from the onset when we advertise that if you need any special accommodations, please do highlight so that we are able to be accommodated. The fear is always that sometimes when you highlight that you need special accommodations, people then tend to fear that if I highlight at this stage of the process, it may be the one thing that actually gets me out of the process. So we need to create comfort and ensure that our employer brands are known for accommodation, such that when you have advertised and you say, please do highlight, people feel comfortable that if it is this employer saying I should highlight, it will not be used against me in the process.
All right, thank you very much for that. Mr. Hule, I think there's just one or two comments here, and there's two more questions or three more questions, which I think you'll probably have to take through on email, looking at the amount of time we have. But we've got Malefo Khwenyane, who says, very insightful presentation, TH. Nokutula Zikale, I'm super happy to see this topic taken further. Sometimes explaining the challenges to supervisors or peers can be difficult because they see it as excuses instead of valid reasons. And that discomfort tends to make one never reach out again. Califo Goodwill says, insightful session, worth attending. Thank you. The rest of the questions, unfortunately, due to time, TH, we will definitely make sure that you get the opportunity to respond. I'd like to hand over to Claire briefly just to take us through the last 2 or 3 minutes of what's available on the time slot. Thank you so much, TH. You are sincerely appreciated. You've been awesome as always. Over to you, Claire.
Thanks very much. I hope you can hear me. I am just trying to go onto my slide presentation. I don't know why it's not going to the first slide. Apologies. Thanks so very, very much, Mr. Hule. You're such a fantastic speaker, as you can see by all of the interaction. And I was happy to meet you in Botswana in February. I want to just quickly take literally 1 minute to just let you know about the African Labour Law Society and to thank you for being on the call. And if we can interest you in becoming a member, you will have seen some links that I have put in the chat, but I will include in the email that I'm going to be sending you. We started in 2017 and we have quite a few chapters around the continent. Our intention is to grow the labour law discipline in all jurisdictions and to encourage collaboration, communication, and learnings from all different parts of our beautiful continent. And want to just highlight that we are in the process of setting up the Botswana Labour Law Society, and we have many, many people from Botswana on this call, and so really encouraged by that, and further communication will be sent to you when we are ready to launch the Botswana Labour Law Society. We have membership benefits. The cost to join for a year, 12 months of membership, is either $40, 700 Rand, or 590 Botswana Pula, and these are the benefits. And we've had some great conferences, and they are very well attended, and the conversation and discourse is really valuable. Very important for us to include the sponsors in all of our slides, and we're very grateful to these organizations for supporting us and financially and physically and emotionally. And we have a great management committee, and thank you to our president, Mamedi Tafa from Botswana, who is chairing today, and thank you to him for his time and his guidance. And just wanted to say again, here are the details to join up, and I'd love to welcome some members from this call. And our next event is going to be in August, where we are going to be discussing the latest ILO ruling, I think, on the right to strike. So also like to thank Connor in the background, and thank you to Mamedi, and of course to Mr. Hule, and all of you for joining and staying on for the extra 10 minutes. That's me done, Mamedi.
All right, thank you, Claire. Thank you, Mr. Hule. Thank you to everyone for being a part of this afternoon with us. Please do join the African Labour Law Society, do become a part of this amazing movement. It doesn't cost much, but the value of what you're getting is extremely beyond the 590 pula that you might have to pay. You will get immense opportunities to interact with people from African states across the globe. We've had people from overseas coming to present in Botswana, but conferences taking place all over Africa. So with those brief words to Claire, to Connor, thank you so much for facilitating today and trusting me with so many people. I thank you so much. I love you all, and goodbye to everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.